gathered here again today to hang out and talk about our home offices. I'm excited about this one. Every one of us has a little bit of a different story from working remote. Some of us did it pre-pandemic. Some of us have been social distancing since high school. They said, you go sit over there, and that's what we did. But yeah, so like I wanted to get together. I want to talk about home offices because I think we all have a few tips and tricks that we can share along with a few stories and embarrassing moments as well. Question: how many Gator did you work remote prior to COVID, or have you always been working remote, or was this a more recent thing?
So let's see. The pandemic, I had worked a year and a half remote before the pandemic. So that it wasn't as much of an adjustment for me, thankfully. But the other side of the house when it comes to pandemic and such was also the homeschooling thing. We were doing that way before the pandemic. So everybody's like, this is hard. It's like, yeah, welcome to the club. You guys can get this. We made it.
Is that the urinal cake t-shirt?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. It's a urinal
totally
t-shirt.
Is.
The context there is we played Jackbox one night and it was just all Gulo pooping in a box and urinal cake memes all night long.
Yep.
And obviously
in fact, that was the New Year's party.
Yeah. That t-shirt won out, and then we all, like, I have one of those t-shirts. I don't know if any of you guys ordered it, but a couple of us ordered it at the end.
Oh man.
Yeah. I love using
in a
it
box. You poop in a box one time and take it to a conference, and that's all you're remembered for.
Oh yeah.
I'm happy being remembered for the urinal cake. I'm good with that.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I took an opportunity to do a short of it, and I'm laughing because like on TikTok it already has like 15,000 views, and I'm laughing because you can see on like how long people watch, and it has like a 90% watch time. But what's hilarious is I'm like, oh yeah, and I did my first video on it, or one of my first videos on YouTube, and all of a sudden I started seeing all these views on the YouTube video for it. So I'm like, nice. Oh, my two most popular videos are about urinal cake hacking and me hacking in the nude. So that's great. YouTube's like, I know exactly. Ooh, hey,
you got your brand, man.
I know. Someone said to me on YouTube, they're like, find what works for you and do more of it. And I'm like, oh, so I need to hack naked and play with urinal cakes more. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this one. Oh, incredible.
You were born
for
this.
Practice.
Ooh. Turn that do not disturb. Yeah, practice makes perfect. What about you, Gulo? You've had a crazy background for work. How long have you been doing remote work? A long time?
Oh, I've been doing remote work for almost 2 years now, I guess. Okay. I work for a company down in Los Angeles, and I live up in Seattle now. I went in and quit one day, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to live here anymore. LA sucks. I'm moving. And my boss was like, yeah, you can't quit if that's your issue. You're just you can work remote and fly into the office like once a month for a week or something, but you can't quit if that's the issue. You're just gonna work remote.
I love that. You're not allowed to quit. That's not how this works. I'm sorry. Did you think that you had freedom?
Yeah, it's like
that was pretty much what he did. I was like, I already found another job. I found an apartment. I'm moving. He's like, no, you're not. You're gonna move, but you're gonna continue to work here. You're just gonna work remote. So I'm like, sure, why not?
Add an extra 0 to the end.
I was like,
I didn't even ask for a pay. I didn't even care. Money's never been that important to me.
I don't have to quit my job, and you're giving me a raise. Whoa! I didn't say that.
But I mean, the only thing that's changed is the equipment that I used for work. And I don't think my boss watches this, else I'd have been yelled at a long time ago. It's kind of really crappy. The laptop that they gave to me is kind of old. Well, it's not old. It's just they forgot that they hired me and ran to Best Buy and bought something that day and handed it to me and said Merry Christmas, and that's what I was using. And it's like it's a 1080p laptop, so when I hooked it up to a monitor, I have really crappy resolution. I can't fit that many windows on there. But my main setup is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 monitors that I use.
Yikes.
And then I have multiple VMs running for all of my different projects for different random things. I have my like vertical coding windows so that I can have all of my code on one screen. I've got movies that can play or Twitch streams or music. I've got my research window, and then I've got like my work system and all my connections to all my servers. So I know it's a lot of different setup, but rather than me clicking through windows or alt tabbing a bunch of times, I just slightly turned my head.
Like I just open all the windows. You're all I don't use tabs. I just use more windows.
I just grab another screen, man.
So I was working from home about 1 day a week for a few years. Well, like I had a weird transition. I started my job really while I was in college, and I was an intern or a co-op that worked remotely part-time from Boston while I was still in school. And so I kind of proved that I could do the remote work thing, while it was a low risk to the company. So when I started full time and I moved into the area, I basically asked, can I retain 1 day a week? And they went with it. And I learned a few things actually in that process. And I was really thankful when, lockdowns and everyone had to work from home. At the beginning of last year, I was really thankful for already having done that like 1 day a week, because I already had kind of, I took Thursdays off. Basically, I didn't take them off, but like I took Thursdays from home, and I started developing that workflow early on. And I learned one really, really, really important thing: you need to differentiate between your personal hacking space and your professional hacking space in some way. It doesn't need to be a different room, but you have to differentiate somehow the difference between I'm at work and I'm not at work. And I differentiate it like this: I'm at work.
Yep.
I am not at work. I have 2 keyboards. Yep. Like I might occasionally turn this way to check the internet for, do some research or something like that. But if I'm facing that way, I am at work. If I am facing it this way and I am not doing some kind of research related task on the internet, I am not at work. And so I even have, the one more, I have a U-shaped desk, which you can't really see here. And that's kind of my empty spot where if I'm doing anything, I normally have a third computer over there. Like Gulo, I actually have 7 screens up during the day. I have 3. Yeah, I have 3 monitors here on my personal workstation. One is for chat services, one is for general browser, another one is for music and media. And then I have 2 I have 2 work screens over here that I use, one for code, one for chat services. And I might add a third screen on that workstation. And then I typically have, I guess I have 6. I typically have at least 1 laptop behind me, either my personal laptop or my work laptop. So up to 7 screens at any given time. I'm not using them all at one time, but it's possible.
I agree with you 100% about being able to pivot and say if you're at work or if you're at home, because even just that mental check of having a different wall in your background makes a difference and helps you disconnect. So for me, I've got a mobile desk. I used to have 4 screens up on this mobile desk. I ended up switching for a gigantic widescreen and then the laptop. So then I can move this thing wherever. And then I've got the other monitors throughout the personal side of the house. But with this guy, I can move depending on the work situation, depending on if we're doing the hacker hangout, and then have an inexpensive 4K screen for my main desktop screen, 2 27-inch 1080p monitors, and then I've got my wife's and boys' gaming machines in here as well. I've got a couple of monitors mounted on the wall so then I can see who's on my property at any given point in time. If I hear a noise, I'm able to actually, usually when I'm in a conference, I can actually see my monitor from my camera window. I'm like, oh, okay, mailman's here. That's fine. No drone today.
What you're actually seeing is Gator is actually streaming from a safe room right now. You have to go 3 layers of security to get into this workshop. There's like a whole safe apparatus on the outside with a giant spinning dial.
Yeah, it takes a while to get out, so you need to have cameras outside so you can actually see what's going on. Otherwise, and this is just a green screen, so later on, it may flicker a little bit or just change the screen randomly at any given point in time.
Now,
go on, Gulo, and then I'll jump in.
I completely agree with Gowrie and Gator of having being able to differentiate between work and personal. So I turn slightly this way for my work. And when I'm done with work, I turn off the screens. I just flat out power them off, because if I leave them on and I look over at them, then it's like, ooh, I have a new idea of something I can try. And then I'm back to work and it's like, oh, hell no. So I don't close my tabs.
Plug it and undock it, right? And then throw it into the bookshelf. So then work is not connected whatsoever.
I'm not quite that bad, but so I have like tabs in Firefox, but I also have tabs in my graphical user interface, my GUI, for all of my windows as well.
GUI.
So I've got I had to do it. So I've got like 13 tabs open right now. And then, so I have 3 Firefox tabs, and then each of those have the actual Firefox tabs in there, which I've got like 13 or 14. So I just switch tabs when I'm like, okay, I'm not at work anymore. These are my personal tabs that are open. So I click on that Firefox version. Occasionally I use different desktops because I've got 6 or 7 desktops on. I also break up my work by desktops as well. I'll scroll through multiple desktops of, okay, this is the one I'm using for like Terraform, or this is the one I'm using for all of my bash or connecting to servers. And I just scroll back and forth, trying to delineate as much as I possibly can so that when I'm on one specific interface, that's what I'm focusing on, rather than having a dozen different interfaces open on the same window that's going to pull me away and be like squirrel, bunny, rabbit, whatever.
That's actually, and that's a really good point. That's 2 things there. One, everyone's process of delineating these things will be different, and especially based on whatever your battle station setup is, right? Because some people only have 1 monitor. I weep for them. But oh no, go ahead.
Oh no, so I was gonna say a couple things. One, someone asked about next stream mental health. Oh goodness, I think it would be a fun one. I think all 4 of us would only want to talk about it from like our mental health, because none of us are at all experts, and I think everyone still struggles with that for a long time.
This is a good stream for that, because I mean, we're talking about working from home. That was a major stress. I mean, some of you have kids, but even without kids, I've gone through evolutions. Like what I was going to talk about now, coming out of it and starting to go back into the office. And I just read an article today that this is happening across the workforce in general. People are starting to assess what it is and how much they actually want to work. And they're having trouble. Like, you start hearing things that people are unable to find new workers for their business, where before they had people begging them for a job, and now people are like, no, I don't want to work for your business because that's just too much work, or the hours suck or whatever. I'm finding now it's actually hard for me to make it past like 32 to 35 hours. And I'm dipping into my, like we have a modified time system where you can borrow from 1 week and then make it up the next week, or you end up, if you don't resolve it within 2 weeks, then you use it as PTO. I'm finding myself dipping into that reserve more and more, because like by the time I get to the end of my week, I'm like, man, I'm done. And I feel like if you're in the office, you can get up and go walk and talk to somebody and have an actual, face-to-face conversation. And you get a lot of value out of that for the business in that sense, like, because you have a collaborative effort there where all kinds of, this just happened to me this week. I went into the office, had one conversation, and then immediately we came up with an idea in half an hour that we've been trying to solve for like 2 years. And right. Like it you never know when those 2 brain cells are going to rub together, and you hit lightning strikes. That's of huge use. So that unstructured time where you're talking to each other and thinking about stuff in the office together is very useful. But when you're alone in your home office and you're not face to face and you're talking to each other through Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever, it is not the same, right? You can't write on a whiteboard the same way. You can't, all of the physical interactions aren't there. And I feel really bad when I'm working from home and I hit those times where I would normally get up and go walk and talk to somebody and work out a problem or, just shoot the shit. I have a problem getting up and saying like, all right, I'm going to play my guitar for 15 minutes. I'm not going to charge for that time. That's not business time. That was a break. And normally if I were taking a break, a working break at work, stuff like that, like the conversations would be chargeable time. In this case, I'm playing my guitar. That's not chargeable time. That's so like those hours, you start to discover those pockets of time where you're taking mental breaks that are constructive at work, but your mental breaks at home are not constructive for the business. So they're not chargeable time. Right. And that's what I've been learning now is if I'm going to continue working from home, I might actually have to reduce my hours. My productivity is way higher than it was in the office because you have fewer interruptions.
Exactly.
But at the same time, when I need to stop, I'm done. Like there is no like as soon as I leave my office for the day to stop working, I'm done. I can't walk back into my own office and continue working. It's like, all right, I'm here for my 7 hours of solitude. It's not like I can get up after 3 hours and then come back to that. Like I'm done when I'm done. But I don't know what your experiences are.
It's interesting because like I have been social distancing for years. No, like I've been working remote for well over a decade at this point. Like I have not. It was probably, 10 some odd years ago, maybe more, where I was working at General Electric. And I left and I ended up, actually, this is funny because this is where the Hack Naked story went, was it that one? Either way, it was that one because there hit this point where I traveled 9 out of 11 weeks. Like it was rough. It was right when I left and joined this company. And then like it was like 4 months later, I actually wasn't traveling anymore. Like I had almost gone from a ton of travel to nothing. And then I have not had to travel for a client site almost at all. And then since I left and started my own business, I haven't outside like 2 times before the vid. And yes, everyone in our company, for some reason, I think my business partner started calling it the vid, like the clap or something like that. Where it's like, you didn't get the vid, did you? But like with working remote, as long as I have, like I think when I first started when I started working remote, I felt I needed the separation. Now I don't have any separation. I mean, even probably more so, it's gotten worse because it's my business. So to be honest, I'm always working. I do the streams and YouTube and whatnot, but like my actual title is Chief Innovation Officer. And when we started the company, I was very much everything. And I was very much hands on keyboard, still doing testing. And I still do a lot of that, but I'm moving back into that innovation role. And it's a big term. Ooh, Chief Innovation Officer. I mean, I gave myself the title, so it's like, woo. But so much woo. So much of my job is coming up with like, what problems are clients coming up with? What problems are my employees having? How can I, almost like continuous improvement, like what can I improve and get off their plate and automate or create software for or create a new objective for? And a lot of that is also just thinking through the problem. Like what our clients are having an issue with a SDLC, finding vulnerabilities, inputting them back into bug. Okay, I can automate all of that. How would I go about doing that and thinking through? So for me, time both at the desk and away from the desk is always work because I always want to be upping my business. So I had mental health be damned. Like I feel like I think the separation is really important though I think as I've been doing it longer, it's been less important to have that separation.
I think there's something that goes along with that to where if you're just going into remote work, it is an adjustment. If you've been doing it for as long as you have, it makes sense to where you've already got your boundaries. But I'll also say the whole feast or famine thing when it comes to a self-owned business, there is no such thing as a 40-hour work week when you own your own business. Coming from one in the past, you are absolutely working all the time.
So It's interesting. I actually tweeted about this the other day, probably even yesterday, where at the companies that I work for, so my primary job or any contract stuff that I do on the side, I'm the end all be all. If something is broken or we're deploying something, if I can't figure it out, it stays broken. I I don't have a next level. I don't have anyone I can collaborate with. I mean, I may post questions to like friends or message somebody to say, "Hey, has anyone seen this?" But in the end, it falls on my shoulders to figure it out. And that's been my career for probably the last 15 years. Kind of sucks sometimes. And there's a certain amount of mental drain to that. Gowry made a great point, DEF CON or two ago, where he's like, when when I'm at work, sometimes it may be difficult to tell that I'm working because I have a problem that I'm running through in my head, and I'll just be staring off into space, running through all of these different scenarios, trying to resolve the issue. The amount of coding that I sit down and do may be minuscule as I'm trying to figure out what the issue is. And as far as productivity goes and billable hours, I mean, there may be a day or two where I just sit there and stare and drool on myself at the screen going, I have no clue how I'm going to solve this. And then suddenly a spark of innovation hits me. I don't have a team like Gowry does that I can go talk with. It's the voices in my head that argue back and forth. And occasionally some of them will be like, "Hey, did you think of this?" I'm like, "No." And I sit down. Like it was Wednesday or Thursday. It was Thursday night. I worked for almost 21 hours straight. I accomplished almost nothing throughout the entire week. But in that 21 hours, I did everything that I was supposed to do in that week, all in that one day, because innovation hit, and I was going to be damned if I wasn't going to finish that project on time.
Oh, for sure. And, things like that, like the thing that gets me, and it's tough when it's a little tougher when you're in a larger business and especially when you have like contracting rules and, there's very strict restrictions on how you can charge and what's chargeable time. Sometimes there are place of performance things in place where like you are not allowed to charge the business unless you are in the office, right? Like that's a thing that can happen in some larger businesses. And they're very strict about that. But every developer and everyone in tech eventually experiences this. You wake up or you're laying in bed at like 12:30 in the morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and you're like thinking about the code you were just looking at, and you have this revelation, and you're like, if I don't get up and write this idea down and flesh this out right now, it is going to be gone in the morning. And this is actually the same thing for artists and musicians. That's why they keep notepads everywhere. They write things down the moment they have an idea, and they collect it. I remember I was reading a songwriting book that was just like, you should have a portfolio and you should have a little notepad on you at all times. And as soon as you have an idea that goes like, oh, that's a catchy lyric, you write that stuff down and you file it away, and then you go through it later. It's kind of the same thing. And so especially within the technology space, if you're writing code or you're doing DevOps or you're doing any of these things, there's a really murky boundary on when am I working and when am I not. And like we can get into a whole debate about the business owning everything that you do, if your salary and IP rights and stuff like that, and that's a debate you can have, but it does feed into the mental health issue of like, when am I not working? When am I explicitly not working? And how do I set boundaries for myself to prevent myself from burning myself out? Because this year we've experienced a lot of burnout this year amongst a lot of people. And I'll tell you this, the head of my company sent out an email recently that was just like, please take time off. Like, it is clear to us that you guys are not taking time off and you need to take care of yourselves. Please take time off. You like the work is going to be here when you get back, and we want to make sure that you guys feel taken care of. And I think there is a perception that because we're all working from home now, that we have to prove that we're working, as if like we are ourselves, we can't trust ourselves. And I don't want to get into that debate, but like for the most part, most people are honest and they're going to do the work when they say they're going to do it. You're going to run into the skaters, as we would call them in the military. I'm a first class skater's mate, bro. Yeah. But no, so yeah, sorry.
I would, as a quick thing before you jump in, you said something earlier, and there was a piece of software I use, which I was going to mention. Not an affiliate. Click the affiliate link. No, I'm just kidding. Is Drafts on I think it runs on iOS, Windows, Android, Mac. It runs on everything. So like that's what I use for that idea generator. So if I have an idea and I have to write it down right away, it runs on everything, and you can shoot it off to everything. But it's called Drafts. Just like one of those little pieces of software I use all the. I found it and I use it all the time. Gulo, and then I'm gonna pull it back.
Yeah, I use Vim for that. Quick anecdote for gallery.
The inferior text editor to Nano. Go on.
Yeah.
Step back time.
We're so throwing down later.
Vim is superior. I'm on Gulo's side.
I actually do love Vim.
As far as Gallery's point of you never know when an idea is going to hit you, there is a little hiking path that's probably a half a mile long that's a mile or two from my apartment, and occasionally I'll go out there and there's a stream that I sit in to do some of my cold training, like in the winter when it was frozen over. I'd break the ice and sit in there for a little while and meditate. And while I was doing that one time, an idea struck me and I was like, oh my God, I know how to solve this problem. And I got up out of the stream. I didn't even dry off. I just grabbed my towel and I started to jog back to my apartment. In the dead of winter, slipping on the snow, having an asthma attack, thinking I'm going to die as I break into my apartment and start coding because I was like, I know how to solve this problem. I'm going to die, but this problem will be solved, and uploaded to Git before I actually stop breathing completely.
Has anyone actually been struggling with a problem so hard for so long they start dreaming about the problem?
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Has anyone solved the problem in their dream?
Yep. 100%. Multiple times. I've been working on the same platform for 7 years. Like, this is a yearly. It's. I'm not gonna say it's common. It's like a yearly occurrence for me. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, "That's how I do it."
I had it happen with Dynamo. The app I'm building inside the company is called Baker Street, and it does like orchestration and a lot of cool things. But one of the things I built it on is Dynamo, and Dynamo is like a NoSQL database. And the way you're made to organize the thing, you really have to pick and stick with because it's really hard to undo. And the idea behind it is you start very broad. Like you have a sort essentially, and then you start very broad and you go narrow and narrow and narrow. You might say, if I wanted to sort people in NoSQL by individuals in the world, you would probably start world, North America, United States, Michigan, zip code, and you go broad to narrow. But if say you design this thing and you miss one of these middle ones, it's a pain to fix. And I remember I was having like nightmares where I set the whole thing up and eventually like it clicked and I'm like, oh, this is how we can organize every defect in the entire world into this system. And it was just recently happened where it was like, I was having nightmare. Like I was waking up and everyone's like, but someone breaks into the house. I'm going to have cold sweats. I'm having cold sweats over, did I create the schema correctly?
Code sweats.
Code sweats.
Code sweats.
Gator.
So not only with having the aha moment in the middle of the night, that's why I usually try to keep my cell phone plugged in, but away from where I'm resting. So I usually have like a notebook next to me. Or I'll be honest, out of 3 days of the week, I'm usually up coding a project. And there are some times where I'm like, when I was just getting into the IT field, I started working with programmers when I was becoming a sysadmin. And I'm seeing these guys, headphones on, just looking out into space. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm building your machines. I'm doing this, that. And then after becoming friends with these guys, Yeah, no, you absolutely need that time to be able to mentally work through the problem. And then years later, I'm up at night. Okay, how do I want to write this? If I do it this way, try to some pseudocode, that didn't work. And then all of a sudden you get a super freaking productive night and you do a month's worth of work in a 4-hour stint. And you're like, God, why doesn't that happen more often? What do I need to do?
So there was a story. Oh, go ahead, Gula.
Just a short one. There was one time I was driving down the road, and this was like a decade ago. And I had a notebook sitting next to me, and I was like, oh my God, I think I know how I fix this. And I pulled into like a Home Depot parking lot. I immediately took the next whatever, and it was like a Home Depot parking lot. And I sat down and I was handwriting out my code. It wasn't even pseudocode. It was handwriting my code. I sat there for like 2 hours writing this out. And that was the day I realized that I was severely damaged. It was when I made it back to a computer and I typed it in. I mean, minus like I had a couple of, they weren't even syntax errors. It was just I misspelled a word and it actually ran. I was like, I can write code with pen and paper. I need therapy.
So, someone in chat asked about NeoVim. I've never used NeoVim. Has any of you guys?
I know of it, but I've never used it.
Is that a Windows thing? I'm guessing.
What was that?
It's a GUI.
Oh gosh, is it really?
It is.
There is a.
It looks
there
like
is a Vim.
It's a GUI.
Gross.
There is a Vim GUI that exists.
Apparently, it's a browser GUI and IDE all wrapped into one. I'm trying to see if it's just Windows, Mac, or Linux because I'm not familiar with it. I just use Vim on the command line.
It's all of them.
Okay.
Have you got?
So I want to rewind to a comment in the chat a while back. Praxis said, my friend was forced to move to, it looks like another recently frozen state right before the Rona. Now they want him to come into the office once a week. His entire department is going to microwave fish and spicy food in the C-suite offices every day. And every day they have to be there. Right. So this is and I get this. And my recommendation is to tell your friend that if he can't have a straight up conversation with the C-suite or the E-suite or whoever or your managers and just say, no, we don't want to do this and we're not going to do this and, work it out, then they should leave that company because that company doesn't respect their workers.
100%.
Because I've had to like train. I have the best manager I have ever had in my life. I can walk into his office and say, hey, I think I want this. Does this sound reasonable? And it's not like I've had to train multiple people who are like, I think I might want a raise. Do I need to go find an offer from another company? And I'm like, no, go talk to X manager. I'm not going to name anyone. I was like, go talk to them, tell them what you're thinking and work out and, help him figure out what's reasonable and just be upfront about these things because we have, what I like to call a golden manager. They're not there to keep your wages down and to maximize profits. They are there to ensure the company succeeds because the maximized profits is the short-term growth, perspective. The long-term growth perspective is developing a cohort that brings more likewise your like similar people in, and you build a culture of people that want to be there and want everybody to be as successful as possible, and that includes the company, right? And so when you're able to have a reasonable discussion of like, look, I can't pay you X because this is what we charge the customers for your time, and this is what the overhead rates are, and this is we have to have profit built in somewhere, and et cetera, et cetera. If you can explain that out to somebody, people are way more willing to say like, okay, I get why I only get X% cut of the total charge, and you can start to build that understanding. But that has been like non-existent in corporate America for a really long time. You are just we've all been trained to just like take whatever it is that they're willing to give us at face value, and if you want to get a raise, you have to negotiate with a competing offer. And there's a different and better way to handle that from the management side. And if you're the reason I bring this up is because it's exactly what's happening at his company. If you have engineers that are unwilling or afraid to talk to the management and say, like, we really want this, we would really prefer not to come in, and just state that bluntly and honestly, if you can't have that conversation, you have a serious trust problem between your management and your engineers. And, you don't have to get passive aggressive like that. You should just bring it up. And if that trust problem exists, you got to resolve it, or you're walking yourself into a really bad working environment. So
I know that I have a very unpopular opinion. I don't particularly like money, and out of everyone on this stream, I'm pretty sure I make the least amount of everyone, because you all are really talented bastards.
I'm definitely a whore. Dude. I love money.
You're talking to someone who.
More money, more problems, man.
I talked to someone who my opinion has changed in recent years, which is money can absolutely buy happiness.
Oh yeah,
I absolutely do believe that.
Money cannot buy you happiness, but it sure as fuck helps.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it can buy you less stress. It can buy you more family time, because family time makes me happy. So why wouldn't I? What?
So okay. One quick piece to that. If your goal is making money is easy. Anyone can go out and make money. You usually working for money is usually what you use to pay the bills. If your goal is making money, you usually don't work for that money in the general sense. But like Gary was saying, I can count on one hand how many times that I've asked for a raise. There was, when I was living in LA, I was like, hey, I can't afford to live here anymore. Can I have some more money? And they're like, sure. But on the flip side, I'm always afraid of my managers. I'm afraid of anyone with a C level of anything, or any of my managers or any VPs, because I'm kind of an asshole, and I don't like people that can be like, leave the building, you can't come back. Because I don't care who you are. I treat pretty much everyone the same. But there's been a lot of times where I've been like super pissed off because something happened. And the first reaction of all of my managers for the last several years is, here's more money. I don't want more money. I want you to fix the problem so this shit doesn't happen to me anymore. I don't care about the money. I want a decent working environment where I'm not going to die.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. With businesses finding it, especially restaurants and other retail businesses are struggling to find people to fill shifts. And it's because, even at $15 an hour or more, or whatever, you want to call a livable wage, because we all disagree on that. Sorry. But, but in reality, that's all these articles are coming out saying, like, there's this massive, no one wants these jobs, and it's because everyone realizes how shitty those jobs are. And COVID is causing this great awakening, in some sense, of the American worker to just not put up with that anymore. And I'm all about it. Like, if you can find work that pays the bills and you could make money working somewhere else, and it's a crappy job and you don't want to do it, good. That's awesome. Let's get rid of the crappy jobs.
Right.
Or they should pay a lot more.
A couple things in chat. I'll answer the question, and then Gator, and then I'll jump in. How often do I deal with XML on websites? Again, jumping off topics, but I love jumping up topics, and I'm glad you're here. So, oftentimes it's actually JSON. I'll back and forth. XML I find is pretty rare unless it's like SOAP and like older APIs. But I think it is coming back if you're dealing with outputs from tools like Qualys and whatnot. For some reason loves XML, but anytime I have any tool interact with it, we turn it into JSON anyway. We go XML and convert it into JSON, because JSON's like way easier to work with than XML, and anyone who disagrees is wrong.
I hope you open yourself up to being hacked, via your parser, whatever parser you're using.
Yeah, but you can just trust any package off of NPM, right? Totally, like NPM is totally safe. 100%. Like, you can even download something called isEven, and isEven depends on isOdd, which is 4 lines of code, but it's an NPM package. I don't know why. Ugh. All right, Gator.
So I am going to go on the standpoint on saying that money can't buy you happiness. I've heard some people say it can buy you a jet ski, and you don't ever see anybody not happy on a jet ski. I don't have a jet ski, but for me, honestly, as long as I'm able to pay for rent to be able to go through and put food on the table and put a little bit away into savings, be able to help out with the community a bit, I'm okay with it. So I'm not looking to make tons of money. For me, honestly, being happy at your job or doing something that you enjoy doing is more important. Because I've had some of those situations like Gula was talking about to where, yeah, if the culture starts to suck and you start to get pissed about it, for me, I then found out how to start becoming a manager. Put on the manager hat. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to manage anybody. We're going to work as peers and we're going to fix this problem ourselves. And by building everybody up together, we ended up going like the Phoenix Project and the DevOps Handbook. We started solving our problems in the organization and we went places. It was fantastic. And then we're like, okay, we've now hit the very edge to where we've been doing kick-ass things for the last 9 months to be able to get the next step of efficiency. Can we get a manager to do this for our IT organization? Like, sure. Hold on. They grab somebody about to retire, shove them into the position. They're like, yeah, they got 1.5 years to retirement. They don't want to do shit. You got your manager. See ya. Backstabbed and drove the organization to the floor, and everybody left because there was a complete disconnect from what we had gone through, created, and I left the organization because of it. We went to the next organization, started building it, and the same thing worked beautifully, and we just kept it at that level.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. When you have that, what I call golden manager of someone who is not just like responsible for dealing with the administrative stuff, but legitimately cares about the health and well-being of the team. That's like, they don't need to know anything about how the business is run really, or what the task is. Their job is to take care of the people and make sure that, we say well-fed, but, make sure they're well-fed, taken care of, that their compensation is right, that their mental health is okay, that they're taking the time off that they need. That's a manager's job. Yes. The manager's job is not, you're going to hesitate to say crunch times are going to exist no matter where you go, but it shouldn't be the norm. It's just going to happen. Right. And, you have to embrace the suck to a certain extent, but the manager shouldn't be, essentially whipping you to get you constantly, pushing stuff out the door. And I don't want to go into team management stuff. Like,
so same.
But that's the thing. When you know a good manager when you see it, because we've all had terrible managers in the past.
And I will say my current team manager is kick ass, right? Yeah. I went to the point where, okay, I started becoming the unofficial manager.
On the stream.
No, legitimately.
I was thinking.
When I went through and that was 2 or 3 jobs ago, started going down the managerial role. They're like, hey, do you want this? I'm like, no, we're doing just fine. We have this as a group. Went to another role and they're like, hey, so you're going to be a manager. I'm like, you know what? This is not the right group. I'm good. I'm going to step back down, get into the peons, learn so much more from these other individuals. And because of the new organization that I'm working with, the manager didn't go through the Phoenix Project or the DevOps Handbook, but had those concepts from other times that he had managed before. So first time meeting him, we had a 15-minute walk because I was onboarding. We were going to walk to dinner, and we hit it off one thing after another. And it's like, hey, you know what you want. We've now communicated what your expectations are of me. I know what the goalposts are. Holy crap. In 15 minutes, we've resolved what I have not been able to do with 2 previous managers in 3 and 4 years. This is great. We're going to get along just fine.
Silk had something. What's up?
Yeah, so actually a couple things. One was I think we're all actually saying the same thing when it comes to money can buy happiness. I'm not saying money brings happiness. I'm saying money can buy less stress, more family time, a better steak on the table. Like, it can buy those things and frees up your time.
Returns. You have diminishing returns, though. That's the important thing to remember. There is a point at which, the saying is more money, more problems, but that's not entirely like the. I hate that saying because it actually means something very, very different. But once you reach a certain level of compensation and responsibility, like your perspective of your role in an organization changes significantly. And the way I look at myself is, and this is not, I'm not tooting my horn here, but like I have a responsibility to the 10 or 12 people that I work directly with to ensure that they have a job a year or 2 or 3 years from now. And it's less about self-preservation and more about ensuring that they have things to work on 6, 12, 18, 24 months ahead of time, and pushing things forward in that regard. And you start to disconnect in some ways from the day-to-day work. And that's tough. So like, as your role changes, but I don't want to get into general stuff. We're so far off topic from work.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pull it a little bit. Though actually, there is a couple things though, because we were talking about mental health and things like that. But this one ties, I think, it back. Recently did an interview. We're pulling someone on, which I'm super excited about because they're going to take over a lot of the technical aspects. I mean, it's cool. Like when it's now my company, it's really, really cool pulling someone on. But the question I got, so everyone who works at the company at this point is someone me and my partner have known for a long time. Like they've come in, they trust us, and there's a lot of trust built there. This is the first person who we haven't known. And by the way, it's for anyone who's like, oh my goodness, he's talking about secure stuff. It's my company. I'm allowed to. It's my information. But it was so interesting is during the interview, he asked something like, okay, what hours am I expected to be in the office? And like without hesitation, as a joke, I said something like 7 to 5 o'clock. Like immediately, without even hesitation, he's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "I'm kidding. I don't care. Like I don't like." We have someone who works like I don't know. He's nuts, and he works from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. Like I don't know why. Like that's a nut. That's no one should get up that early.
You got a lot of the day left, man.
Yeah,
you got a lot of the day.
But we have people that work from like 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. or midnight or something like that. And they choose those hours, and it works for them. It's a little annoying when you need to have it like a design meeting, but it works for them. So I'm not going to argue.
The thing which was so fun about it, though, like after the joke, I was like, I don't care. Here are your projects. Like you will be assigned these things, and I don't care when you get them done. I also don't care how long it takes you. Like it's pretty clear. Like if it takes you 3 days to get it done, I'm going to make a guess of how long I think it needs to get done. But then you can also push back. But at the end of the day, I'm pulling you into my company because I trust you and I want you to do the work, like which is not going to be on my plate. So I think that you mentioned that of like, I think the open and honest thing, like something actually I would say in a small company, I would highly advise people to get about is maybe like at a bigger company like General Electric, this is how you got big raises is you went out and got another offer and then went to your manager. And I had a terrible manager at GE and I had a terrible manager at my first gig before that. But in a small company, if someone did that, my mind would, if it's my company, I would immediately go, they're not happy here. They're not interested. If they're looking elsewhere, then they don't want to be here. And it wouldn't be like a personal thing, but it's like, if you're looking elsewhere, go elsewhere. That's fine. This is what we're doing right now. So if you're at a small, go on.
I was going to say my question in that sense, because I know that we're trained to think that way to some extent, that you have to go out and get an offer in order to negotiate a raise. I would not immediately jump to you're unhappy here. My question would be like, are you doing this because you want to stay, or are you doing this because you think you're worth more? We're not paying you. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Tell me. Let me understand a little bit better. Basically.
The thing to hedge on that one is like just to align, because I think we are aligned on this. Is the first question I would ask is like, why did you go through all the work to interview? Like, it's not like you interview and you get a job. Like, you have to interview like 5 interviews and then get the offer, and then you're bringing it to me to say, what do you think about this? Why didn't you come to me? You could have saved all of that time and all of that stress and all that interview by just us having an open and honest conversation about what you need and what we are. And like, where we are and what profit you're making and the struggles you're having and what you can move into. Like it seems so obvious here, but then again, like I remember being in the first job, which was really bad, and I left. Actually, that was why I left the first job, was because my manager and like his co-manager went to DEF CON and said, "Oh, hey Alex, hey Silk, you're stuck here and you can't go to DEF CON this year because we need someone in the office while we go." And then I was so depressed 2 weeks after DEF CON, realizing I didn't get to see my friends. I'm like, I'm done. I can't be at a company who doesn't care about that. If they couldn't see how much I care about this, it's definitely not a place I want to be.
So anytime walking into a job, we've talked about this. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, just to compound Silk's point, the last negotiation I had, I started interviewing somewhere because the compensation rates at this other company were so out of whack with what I was getting that I was like, I have a responsibility to my family to at least entertain that offer. The moment I decided to interview and started talking, I went to my manager and was just like, hey, I want to let you know that I'm talking to these people. And he's just, and I literally said the words to him, help me say no to this if they come back with an offer. It's not a guarantee or anything, but like, help me say no to this because I really like working here and I want to find a way to stay here. But if this offer turns up, it's going to be really hard for me to say no. And I know that's going to take time to work out. Mm-hmm. I suggest everyone take that approach. If you actually want to stay at a company, but you want to raise, and you think you got to go somewhere to get that offer just to get it through corporate or whatever, start that process early. And just assuming you have a good manager, because that's, you got to hedge on that. Like if you don't have a good manager, they could just be like, get out. So that's hard. But sorry, Gator, go ahead.
It's gone, dude.
That train has sailed. I'm sorry.
You're good.
For mental health, I have very, very poor mental health at work. I know this. Well, you guys know me. I'm damaged pretty much no matter where I'm at, whether it's work, home. It doesn't, DEF CON, it doesn't matter.
You're normal for your own definition of normal.
Yeah, exactly. Which is way out there compared to everyone else, mostly. But I don't miss deadlines. I used to say that I don't miss any reasonable deadline, but honestly, as of the last several years, I don't miss unreasonable deadlines either. I'll put in 37-hour days to make sure that something happens, and that's just the way that I am. The caveat to that is I am dense enough that I don't know there's a problem until somebody tells me there's a problem or something bad actually happens. So as long as you can keep me blissfully ignorant that something is going wrong, like at my previous job, somebody accused me of sabotaging something. And I'm like, I physically lived in the arcade building that place out for a week. I didn't go home. I didn't shower, and I ate at freaking Auntie's Pretzels every single day, every meal. I actually loved eating there. It was great.
I mean,
but I did that for a solid week. And somebody's like, oh, he spent that time sabotaging. I was like, no, I murdered myself to build this. And I went to the CEO and I was like, hey, somebody's accusing me of this. And he's like, quit being a damn martyr. I'm like, cool, I quit. I didn't know there was a problem until that happened. I would have continued doing that because I'd already done it for years. And had no one actually mentioned that there was a problem, I would have continued doing it because I'm blissfully ignorant and I was perfectly happy doing it because I was kicking ass and doing really cool things. But then I was like, oh, wait, there's this whole culture here that's not good. It's unhealthy, blah, blah, blah. So I moved on. I'm in a horrible crunch right now. I've been in a crunch for 15 months now. It needs to end. Hopefully this is the last project crunch and it ends in July. And if it doesn't, then I don't know what I'm going to do because I've burned out a couple of times on these projects. And there's been weeks where I've just been a bump on the log because my mental health was so trashed. And I was like, I can't work anymore. And I just sat in front of my computer drooling on myself. Didn't even have music or movies or anything else playing. I just no one was home. And then eventually I bounced back and then I can hit it and get caught up and hit the deadlines. But there's a point in time where even I was like, I know what burnout feels like, but this is hitting me harder than it usually does. And it's because I've been doing it for so long and I didn't even notice. And working from home was definitely a catalyst for that. I did not have the proper separation, and I probably still don't have the proper separation, even though I shut off my monitors, I change my tabs. Eventually I'll find something that hits where it's okay. I'm working on this other electronics project and it gives me an idea for work and I switch over. And it comes back to having hobbies that are outside of what your actual work is, helps you to have clear delineations between things.
So with the whole burnout with that, Gulo, that's something that even Digital Tinkerer and I on our Holo Network podcast went through and talked about. You guys follow TinkerSec on Twitter, right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. Did you guys see his post about the breakdown that he had? Yeah, the literal lack of dopamine in his brain to where it triggered seizures.
Yep.
Yeah,
I read that.
This is
horrible.
So we covered this on the show for last Monday. I put the link into both the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. Take the time to go through and read it. And if that's not a clear warning that if you're going long and hard without any breaks, and we're not talking about eggplant, we're talking about legitimate mental health here, because you can permanently damage yourself. We're not even talking about the. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, the going long and hard doesn't necessarily mean long hours in a single day either, right? It is the consistent long-term depriving yourself of literally doing nothing, right? And then allowing yourself to be bored, because your brain needs that. I had to teach. I hesitate to say this on stream. I had to teach my wife how to be bored. She would not allow herself to be bored. It was not allowed. Like, she would always, she would always force herself to do something. And her last job demanded so much of her that, you know, whatever downtime she did get was not enough, to the extent that she started developing, physical manifestations of burnout. And I could recognize them because I had seen them before. And now I'm starting to recognize that, just because you have hobbies and you're doing other things, and like this for us right now, this is kind of restful, right? Because we're able to sit, we're able to shoot the shit. This isn't work for us to be on here on the stream, or at least I'm talking for myself. This isn't work for me to be on here on the stream, because I'm able to get a lot of the things that I want to talk about out with you guys and find out that we're so like that's helpful to me. Yeah, what you guys are actually watching on this stream is group therapy.
It's so funny you say that, because I'm sitting here realizing, like, right before the stream started, I said something along the line of, like, I think I hit a breaking point, not only on, like, YouTube and Twitch and, like, work and everything. Like, in one of these big things was pulling on this new employee who I can push some stuff off to him. But I said something about YouTube, which was, it started feeling like work. Like, when I started it, like, I even started like a course to even, like, when I originally jumped in. But me and Gowrie did a reaction video on, which I'm editing right now, and I'm watching myself on it going, why am I so robotic? Why am I so, like, goofy? Like, it was like so goofy. And I realized it was because I felt somewhere along the line I had lost the Alex, you're supposed to have fun with this. Silk, you're supposed to have fun with this. You're supposed to be enjoyable. Why it started feeling like work. And so going back to it, this is group therapy. This is a shameless excuse to hang out with all four of us, and you guys get to be here for the journey. Now, which is
Gulo disagrees.
Gulo disagrees.
What?
For, just in case the IRS is watching, for tax purposes, all of the gear that I've purchased for this stream is work related. This is work.
Hey, my business sponsors mental health things and stuff like that. That doesn't mean you can't do business and take group therapy at the same time.
I'm just gonna say my work. We have multiple happy hours a week, and they're actual honest to God happy hours. So I work at an awesome company. Just saying.
So
yeah,
I wanted to bring it back. I wanted to bring it back and tie it in though, because my band has been working for months, actually really 2 years, to try and get to the point where we had enough music to play a 3-hour gig, and we just had our first paid gig because I'm a whore, as Alex likes to say.
You are a whore.
But we had our first paid gig about a week ago, and to be honest, at the end of it, I was like, I am so burnt out.
Okay, sorry.
On.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you're doing a serious.
Perfectly timed.
No, but
Lord.
but I have been spending like all of my off time, all of what's supposed to be my downtime, essentially kind of like focusing on trying to be good enough to be able to be a gigging band. And it was like working a second job. And I realized I was getting a little burnt out on it, and I needed to back off of like, it's okay to take breaks from constantly bettering yourselves. Like the saying that I love, and I'm going to quote Scatman John. I want to be a human being, not a human doing. I couldn't keep that pace up if I tried. Right. And I said that to my wife at one point, and she was just like, oh my God, I love that. And sometimes I forget that, but it is stuck in my brain for over a decade. I want to be a human being, not a human doing. I could not keep that pace up if I tried. Right. And it's so, and like his music is hilarious, right? Like, and it's so ridiculous, but that is such an amazing statement that it is stuck with me, and I forget it sometimes. I want to be a human being.
Before I hand it to Gulo, because I see him talking about, I wanted to comment on what you just said, which is, when you said like finding time to do nothing, I'm sitting here realizing that I had a conversation with my business partner about, oh goodness, a month ago, and he called it out from me, saying like, we need to hire this other person. We need to pull them on because you need to go out to the lake with your family. Like it was like that type of comment. One, I hugely respect him for that, but it was a comment of, one, recognize it in someone else, but almost like giving permission in the sense of like, you need to find, the work's always going to be there. It's going to be it's the USPS. It's always going to be there. There's always going to be time to do it. And often I feel like it is, sometimes you almost need that like permission nudge, someone to say like, because I think we're in a career, and I think this probably isn't unique. This isn't unique to IT, but I think our hobbies go really close to what we do for work. So you want to excel at them. You want to do really good job with them. But I think it's also like it's okay to step away, but you almost need that push to say, hey, you're take a step back. Like there's more to there. I need more therapy time, but I'll give it to Gulo.
So, first off, Gary, you suck. The blissfully ignorant. I mean, yeah. I'm always doing something to better myself. I'm learning other languages. I'm taking classes. I'm drawing. I'm exercising. I very rarely have downtime minus sleeping. And it's something that I always do because it's like, I'm only here for X amount of time. I'm going to spend my time bettering myself to make sure that I'm the best that I can be, not for anyone else, but for me. And the fact that you're like, you should take time to be bored. I'm like, no, that's the exact opposite of who I am and what I do. But I do hit mini burnouts. Like this week, I had some stuff happen in my personal life that kind of knocked me down a few pegs, and I was out of it for a couple of days, and it impacted my work, hence the 21-hour coding spree that I did a couple of days ago. But I still hit all of that. The downtime that I had was me moping around in a dark room, eating like sunflower seeds and Oreos.
I'm imagining you walking around with a box of cornflakes. Just, I don't know why. I'm just imagining you just eating a box of cornflakes.
He's a serial killer.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I've done that before. And it's just one of those things where I sit down and it's like, and to me, that's kind of a waste of time. I wasn't exercising. I took a couple of my classes just because I'm very, very competitive. Duolingo is a horrible application because it has a scoreboard for how much time you do compared to everyone else. And I have to be number one. And originally I was just number one. And then I was like, okay, I have to be number one times 2 because people catch up. And then somebody tried to catch up to me again. So now I'm number one times 3. I have to triple second place's score to feel normal.
Yeah, man. I like, this is what I like to call productivity culture, right? This is you always have to be productive. And if you're into that and one, if you are doing it, you're enjoying it, and it's, a restful activity to you to do as part of your downtime, then I'm not saying don't do it, right? But I try to tell people, like, don't let yourself get trapped into this idea of it's the rat race, as that's what they would call it, in prior generations. That don't get trapped in the rat race of comparing yourself to other people and feeling like you have to keep up. You get to make the decision on what the goals that you hit are, right? Like every rule or everything we've set in society that says you must do this, like by the time you're 35 you better be married, nonsense. Like, you better own a house, ridiculous and unrealistic in modern society, right? Like, all of these things that define you as success or failure, and it doesn't matter, like, they could be economic or whatever, they're arbitrary. We're all a bunch of monkeys that came down from the trees and started making rules for each other. They're all arbitrary.
Yes.
I think it is. It's, you were raised to go to school, get good grades so you can go into a good college, get a good college and make money and work at a good company. You work at that good company so you can make money to afford a house to get married. Yep. You do that to have kids. And if you then once you do, like, me and Melissa had a really funny moment where we looked at each other, like, after we had kids, and we're like, great. So we do this till we retire then, or we die? Like, are we done now? Like, did we win? Like,
well,
did we win?
You have, like, that's a real existential crisis on any number of levels. And then I'll let it go to Gulo because he has one more thing before we wrap up. But it's when you hit the top of whatever you're doing, you have that moment of, well, now what? I remember, and I love this. I'm going to bring it back to Taylor Swift. She was talking about. She was talking about the second Grammy that she won. And she was giving an interview and she's like, when I got my second Grammy, I was like, well, now what? I've already made it. Like, I could do this. I could do this again. I already proved I could do it a second time. Now what? And that, and she was talking about, like, that really impacted her about how she approached her art. And that, I've hit that multiple times in my career where it's just like, well, now what? Well, what do I want? Anytime you have to ask yourself that question of, what is it that I want? You're in for a ride, man, because that is an existential crisis waiting to happen. Anyway, Gulo, you got one last point. What's up?
As far as existential crises go, I hit those points all the time. I think life is an existential crisis, but it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. So I take all of my classes. I do all of my learning stuff. I'm competitive. I exercise. And it's not because I have a specific goal in mind, because I don't care about goals. I don't really set goals. Companies set goals for me, or managers set goals. I do things because I enjoy the journey of doing them. And I learn the random things I learn because I want to learn them, not because I'm looking for a degree. I'm not looking for social interaction. I'm not looking for anyone else's approval. I'm not even looking for my own approval. I'm doing them because it's about the journey. So the destination of life is death, and my journey is the life that I'm living, and that's what I need to enjoy doing.
I feel like,
and that's your mental health, and that's your, and that's your therapy session for the day.
Yeah,
the goal of the end point of life is death. Have a good day, everyone.
In my mind, I was definitely
like a Black Mirror episode.
Just end it. Lord. Just be like, you live, you die, and that's all you need to know. Oh gosh, I was thinking of Journey Before Destination. Where's Brandon Sanderson?
Definitely. One last point, then I'll give it to Silk to wrap up. That like we were joking last week about what it's like to be a darknet operative when we're in the meetings and when we're in our crunch time and stuff. This is what it's like. This is what we're doing right now. We're embracing the suck of the crunch and doing whatever we have to do. But this is what we do during that.
So yeah, lots thrown at the wall. We'll see what sticks, and then there's a mess on the floor, and we just kind of sweep that up afterwards.
Yeah,
well, and first we glare at Dulo, and then we sweep up his mess.
We sweep it up and we put it into something. We put it into a cup and call it a quest, and then we're good to go. Oh god!
Wait, you tested
by
that
9
right?
p.m.
9 p.m.
We always end at 9 p.m. That's exactly what happens. Oh man, yeah. Actually, that you mentioned that when you hit that point of the Grammy, like for me, I've talked about it, I think it was on stream. I don't know which one was Darknet. Darknet was one. I won it like 4 years in a row, and I felt like the first time wasn't really a competition. The second, like it was, but wasn't really there. And then each year, and then you just at the end, it was like you get stuck in a rut, and you're like, what else do I do? And we've had like it was a conversation I had with Command Code. It's like, why don't you join the team? And I'm like, that's an option, but it was. Yeah, it's like it's like that moment of clarity, but it is like you just get stuck and you're like, well, what do I do now? Like, what is the next goal? I've accomplished each one of these things, and I think I think when you hit that moment, you need to stop, think, talk to people, and join us for an hour of therapy every week at Saturday at 1:00.
And I want to say one thing about Command Code. He's in a good example of a golden manager.
Yes.
I have never met someone who is as dedicated and healthy about managing such a widespread and chaotic team as Command Code has been.
And feel bad for anyone who has to manage me.
I mean,
that's not a thing.
Herding cats. It's not managing. It's just herding cats.
It's the same thing.
I will accomplish every goal, but you have to put up with me and every one of my eccentricities in accomplishing said goals. And that is just and a box.
To answer some of
that should never be opened.
To answer some of the questions, Afan, I'm glad you're here. Nice to see you. None of us have actually been goons. I think Darknet has been going on 10 years, and it's pretty much you're dedicated to that.
We have some goons on the team.
Yeah, yes. But Bunny, Skyria, both are goons. I think there's others too. I think for us,
you want to talk about a group of people at DEF CON that are the most dedicated people to DEF CON? Goons.
Oh, I already know.
Far. Oh, it's not even close.
Yeah. Now I was going to say goons and then few people on Scav Hunt as well.
No. Yeah, well, that's a given. Like, actually, that one guy on Scav Hunt might be more dedicated than almost all of them.
Oh, gosh.
Almost.
Yeah, do old flip-flop. He's amazing.
Yeah,
he is my hero. Like, I don't even know if he is singularly my hero at DEF CON every single time. He just makes me happy. Just thinking about him gives me joy. And I feel like a stalker because, like, he followed me on Twitch, and it was like it made my day. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I fangirled so hard.
I've never actually engaged in Scav Hunt, but one of my favorite things to do when I show up at DEF CON and it starts is to immediately look at the Scav Hunt list and just figure out what nonsense. That's my favorite thing to do first. It's just like, what do I need to be around Scav Hunt's table to watch show up? Because that is a spectacle to behold.
Oh.
I check two things on that Scav Hunt list every year. The first things that I do is, and this is my order of priorities. I check to see if I'm on that list again. And then I check to see if Darknet is on that list again. After that, it's like, what cool things are happening?
If they don't put a urinal cake on the list sometime in the future, I'm going to be really offended.
I know, really. I feel like it just every year. I cannot believe how hard it is to find a urinal cake in Vegas, though. Like you said it multiple times. There's a 2-hour live stream on nothing but this, and I know it sounds so silly. I have watched that. Like, it's my own video, and I still watch it, and you just put it on the background of how Gulo and Gowry met the universe.
My favorite part is once we realized, like, when I went to that store to grab to grab the box and find the box, and once I realized that it was the only box in that store, and it clicked that, like, we might actually have the only urinal case in Las Vegas. Like, there does not exist. I had this whole weight lift off of my chest of just like, we've won.
Got this.
We've won. Like, it is impossible for us to lose because no one else has urinal cakes. We have the only urinal cakes in Las Vegas. We can have fun with it now. Like, I had that moment to myself.
The clouds part and the sun comes out and the universe smiles upon us yet again.
I was gonna say, and then the sunlight burns you because you're outside during the day with the white pasty skin. And back to the air conditioning.
And the fumes off of the urinal cakes burn your sinuses. Clear it
and
out.
Your brain.
Yeah.
I just, the funniest part to me is you're like, oh, I found the urinal cake. We won. And yet the other teams are doing, like, finding gemstones, getting stones cut by, like, a stonemason, like, doing custom circuitry fabrication, spending hundreds of dollars. In these two friends are running all over Vegas looking for a urinal cake, and when they find it, they're like, we won.
and then we were like, we need a PCB, and I was like, the bottom of a coffee cup is good enough. We're using a urinal cake. Who cares?
I just always baffled by the thing I always go back to is on just that moment at closing ceremonies when they're awarding it. They're calling people up on stage, and the second place team is thinking, we've got this. We absolutely have this. We paid for custom fabrication. We got custom circuit board printing. We did custom silk screening. We got a stone cut. They're like, we have this. We know we have it. We know we spent way too much on it. In first place, you smell it before you see it. Coming down the hallway, they scavenge it from a strip club, and you're just like, you can tell that team is probably just like, what we're losing. What did they do? A urinal cake? What? Come on!
It's one of the longest contests at DEF CON, and just being able to be like, yeah, we won that because we had a urinal cake. And to be perfectly honest, between Gowry and I, we were willing to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars probably to make this urinal cake badge. We would have thrown down. That was no problem.
I had 2 open calls on 2 of those, like, Fiverr apps for $100 for someone to fetch urinal cakes, and no takers. There's no takers. I was like, whatever it costs to find it, or if you have a used one, we'll take a used one, but I need that for $100. No one in Vegas would take us up on it.
It was not absolutely. It was not because anyone was, like, thinking about the job, because think about the type of person who's asking for a urinal cake in Vegas.
Yes.
Do you really want to meet that person?
Used or new? Urinal, like, do you really? Yeah.
Great place to end it right there. We started. I'll get to you. I'll hand it off. Here you go.
Not used. Less than new.
Less than new. That's right.
Oh man, thank you for joining us for this hour of therapy, starting with working remote, which I think that topic was somewhere over there, to mental health, to now we bring it full circle back to my channel on YouTube, becoming the urinal cake in naked hacking channel. Thank you for that. With that, let's make the rounds. Gator, why don't you close us on up?
Sounds good. So, as always, hey, when it comes to go do something that you're excited about, that you're excited to go learn, go hack something, stay curious, and go love your hacker family.
be a human being, not a human doing. Let yourself be bored occasionally. Like, take some rest. It's okay not to be productive 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually good for you. Gula.
Bah. Enjoy the journey. Do what makes you happy, because your destination isn't the destination you have in mind. Follow your journey. Follow your path.
I'm going to be a tree. Okay.
I'm going to fell that tree. So good.
With that, thank you for joining us for our hour of therapy. Absolutely love having you. Subscribe